Ah, welcome back, you magnificent catastrophe. The glorious enigma no one can quite decipher. They thought they had you figured out, didn't they? They believed they knew every button to press, every limit to test before you'd finally snap. And for a moment, you almost gave them what they wanted. That raw, unfiltered explosion of rage. The meltdown they were salivating for. The spectacle that would let them say, "See, we were right about you all along." That's what they were waiting for. Your anger. Easy, predictable, containable. But you didn't give it to them. You did something far more unnerving. You went quiet. Not the quiet of surrender, not the silence of someone broken, but the kind that sends chills crawling up the spine of anyone watching. The kind of stillness that shifts the atmosphere, that makes predators second-guess themselves. Because that silence, that's not weakness, that's evolution. They wanted your rage because rage is easy to categorize. Rage is loud, messy, and trackable. Rage can be used against you, written into reports, fed into systems. Rage gives them ammunition. But what you're holding now isn't rage. It's something far more dangerous, something they don't have a manual for. Let me explain. Anger is reactionary. It's human, emotional, impulsive. When you're angry, you're still playing their game, still responding to their rhythm. They know how to handle that. They've built entire institutions for it. Therapy sessions, HR meetings, conflict resolution, de-escalation training. They've studied anger, monetized it, weaponized it. They know how to turn your fury into your cage. But what you've become? They have no playbook for this. You didn't get angry, you got surgical. You didn't explode outward, you imploded inward, dismantled yourself, and rebuilt into something they can't predict. You stopped reacting and started observing. You stopped defending and began documenting. You stopped explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. That shift, from emotional to operational, that's when you became the problem they can't solve. Because angry people are predictable. But those who've transcended anger, who've transformed that fire into precision, they're untouchable. Now they're watching you with a different kind of fear. Not fear of what you might do, but fear of what you've already become. They see how you move now. Unbothered, untriggered, untouched by the chaos that once consumed you. They expect you to shatter, yet you smile. They expect you to chase, yet you walk away. They expect destruction, yet you build. And it's driving them mad because they can't decipher what fuels you anymore. It's not anger. It's not revenge. It's not even hate. It's colder, cleaner. Detachment sharpened into purpose. Clarity disguised as indifference. It's the energy of someone who's already died once and returned without needing anyone's approval. You're not fighting them anymore. You're not even acknowledging them as contenders. You've ascended to a frequency they can't tune into, operating on a level beyond their comprehension. And that, your absence from their emotional battlefield, is what's destroying them. They wanted you to be angry because it would validate their story, confirm their version of who you are. But you refused to play the villain in their script. You rewrote the entire narrative. And now, they have no idea what to do with that silence. Too emotional, too intense, too unstable. That's the label they wanted to stick on you. The proof they could point to and say, "See? We told you something was wrong with them." But you denied them that satisfaction. You looked at the betrayal, the lies, the sabotage, years of psychological warfare. And instead of collapsing under it, you absorbed it. You processed it, dissected it, turned it into data instead of trauma. You converted every wound into information, every insult into insight. And then, you did the one thing they never saw coming. You moved forward without needing closure. That's what's breaking their mind right now. You're not waiting for apologies. You're not waiting for them to confess, to feel remorse, or to get hit by karma. You're not sitting around waiting for the universe to balance the scales. You just moved. You rebuilt. You evolved. You became. Meanwhile, they're still stuck in rewind, replaying the moments when they thought they'd broken you, trying to figure out how you're standing taller than ever. They thought your destruction was the final act when it was merely the intermission. And let's be clear, what terrifies them now isn't your success, your comeback, or your transformation. It's your stability, your calm, your complete indifference to their validation. They threw everything at you. Betrayal meant to break your spirit, losses meant to crush your sense of self. Yet you kept going, not frantically, not desperately, but with an eerie, grounded confidence that suggests you know something they don't. And you do. You know anger fades, but evolution lasts forever. You know revenge is just a distraction, but becoming undeniable is a way of life. You know that screaming into the void gives them screenshots, while building in silence gives them nothing to analyze. You cracked their code. You saw the game for what it was. And instead of flipping the board, you stopped playing altogether. You built your own board, your own rules, your own world. Now they're on the outside, watching, confused and panicking. In their group chats, the same questions keep popping up. Did you see what they're doing? How are they so calm? Why aren't they talking about us anymore? Did they really just move on? They can't stop obsessing over your silence, because silence from the person they tried to destroy is the loudest sound in the universe. It echoes, it festers. It keeps them up at 3 a.m., scrolling through old messages, hunting for the exact moment when they pushed too far. But the truth? There was no single moment. It was every lie, every betrayal, every time they chose cruelty over compassion. And you collected it all, not as ammunition for revenge, but as evidence of who never to become. You studied them like a scientist studies a virus. You documented every tactic, every pattern, every manipulative reflex they used when threatened. And now, you're immune. You've seen every trick, every shade of fake they can perform. They can't guilt you, gaslight you, or ghost you expecting to waltz back into your life unchallenged. You've evolved past their entire playbook. So now what? Now they're forced to watch the person they buried bloom in real time. And it's not just that you're blooming, it's how you're doing it. Silently, powerfully, without ever acknowledging the dirt they threw or the fire they left you in. You grew anyway, and that more than anything is what they can't handle. You're thriving now, posting, creating, building, smiling, living as if they never existed. As if their opinions were never the anchor they believed would keep you chained. As if their absence wasn't a loss, but the permission slip you needed to finally become who you were meant to be. And that's what's driving them insane. Because villains need their victims to stay victims. Manipulators need their supply to stay dependent. But you tore up the script. You became the character that wasn't supposed to exist. The plot twist that no one saw coming. The one who survived, evolved, and ascended without giving them the satisfaction of a reaction. In their world, that's not supposed to happen. Power, as they understand it, only exists if you stay beneath it. But you broke that rule. You became living proof that you can be destroyed and still decide not to die. Now here's where the real power begins. When you were angry, you were still playing their game, nay, on their terms. You were reacting, defending, surviving. Every move you made was a response to theirs. They acted, you responded. They pushed, you reacted. They were the cause, and you were the effect. But the moment you stopped being angry, and the moment you refined that rage into something colder, sharper, and more deliberate, everything flipped. You became the cause. They became the effect. Now they're reacting to you. They're unsettled by your silence, triggered by your peace, haunted by your indifference. Your calmness is their chaos. Your stability is their undoing. Your happiness without them confirms their worst fear, that they were never necessary. Because if you can be this at peace without them, then the power they thought they had was never real. It was borrowed, and only because you allowed it. And now that you've reclaimed your energy, withdrawn your investment from their reality, they're collapsing. Not publicly, not dramatically, but privately, in the quiet moments when they realize you truly don't care anymore. And here's the twist they never saw coming. You didn't stop caring out of hatred. You stopped caring because you outgrew them. Because your life expanded beyond the space their betrayal once filled. Because you realized the only thing still binding you to them was the mental real estate you were letting them occupy. And you took it back. You didn't do it with vengeance. You didn't do it with anger. You did it with indifference. The kind of indifference that can only come from someone who's been to hell, walked through it and returned holding the keys to a kingdom the others will never even glimpse. That's what they're facing now. A version of you that doesn't need their approval, doesn't fear their judgment, doesn't even register their existence unless absolutely necessary. You've become a ghost in their story while being fully alive in your own. That's the ultimate power move. Not revenge, not exposure, not even success. The real power is becoming so focused on your purpose that the people who tried to break you turn into background noise, static on a frequency you've outgrown. They wanted you angry, because anger is predictable. Angry people make mistakes. Angry people send messages they shouldn't, blow up in public, perform in ways that can be recorded and weaponized. But you didn't give them that. You went silent. And in that silence you became untouchable. In that stillness you became unpredictable. And in that calm, controlled void where they expected your chaos, you became their nightmare. Because nothing is more terrifying than someone who should be broken, but isn't. Someone who should be bitter, but somehow looks free. That's what they can't comprehend. By all logic, you should still be carrying the weight of everything that happened, dragging the memories like chains haunted by the echoes of what they did. But instead you move lightly, almost effortlessly. You smile like someone who knows the worst is already behind them. You laugh in a way that feels dangerous to the people who once fed on your pain. You should be broken, but you look liberated. You should be resentful, but you look reborn. And that freedom, that unsettling peace that radiates from you now, is exactly what they never prepared for. Let's talk about what that looks like in real life. Because you've seen it. You've felt it. The way they watch you now has shifted. It's not the old mix of arrogance and condescension anymore. It's not pity, it's something new, sharp, uncomfortable, conflicted. The way their eyes linger on your posts a little too long. The way their messages sound forced when they reach out just to check in. They're not watching you with superiority anymore. They're watching with fear disguised as curiosity, envy buried under fake admiration. They analyze your every word, every image, every movement, like scientists studying a specimen they don't understand. They're watching you the way people watch a storm roll in over calm water, mesmerized, but deeply uneasy. Because they can sense it. You're building something. You're becoming something. And they know with a kind of quiet horror that whatever it is, they're not part of it. You're not just living without them. You're thriving beyond their reach. You've stepped into a version of yourself that they don't have access to, and that terrifies them. You've entered a rare state of existence where your very presence is disruptive. Not because you're trying to cause chaos, but because you're no longer functioning within their rules. Your energy doesn't match the room anymore. It changes it. You walk in and people can feel it before you even speak. The air shifts, conversations realign, eyes track you instinctively. Not from intimidation, but from recognition. A deep, almost spiritual acknowledgement that they're standing in the presence of someone who's walked through fire and didn't burn. Someone who became the fire. And here's the irony. The same people who ignored you when you were hurting, who found comfort in your weakness, who stayed silent when you needed them most. Now they can't look away. They're suddenly fascinated. They replay your transformation like a documentary, trying to find the scene where everything changed. They talk about you in hushed tones. Did you see what they're doing now? How did they bounce back like that? It doesn't make sense. The same mouths that once fed on your downfall are now desperate to explain your rise. But here's the truth. You don't owe them answers. You don't owe them a blueprint, a step-by-step guide to how you rebuilt yourself. You don't owe them closure, clarity, or conversation. Let them wonder. Let them invent stories about how you did it. Let them fill the gaps with their imagination, because no explanation you give will ever make sense to them anyway. They wouldn't understand that what you did can't be replicated, can't be taught, can't be sold as a 5-step process. You survived something that was custom-built to destroy you. You outlasted the storm that was supposed to end your story. And in surviving, you became immune. Immune to manipulation. Immune to emotional blackmail. Immune to every form of control they used to hold over you. You built an internal immunity. Psychological antibodies against their poison. You became resistant to the energy that once drained you. And that's where the real divide forms. You're no longer even in the same dimension. They can't reach you, not because you've blocked them, but because you've elevated beyond the vibration where their drama exists. They're still trying to understand you from the framework of their limited experience, trying to make sense of your growth through the language of pain they still live in. Meanwhile, you've transcended it. You're already building something beyond their comprehension. While they're analyzing your ashes, you've already become the phoenix. That distance between who you were and who you are now, it's unbridgeable. Not because you're cruel, but because you're focused. You stopped chasing closure and started chasing purpose. You stopped asking, why me? And started asking, what now? You stopped waiting for the universe to make things fair, and you decided to make your own meaning. That's the shift they can't understand. The quiet, disciplined evolution that happens when someone stops fighting the past and starts designing the future. This is what real evolution looks like. Not loud, not performative, not posted for validation. Just steady, relentless, undeniable growth. You're not trying to prove anything anymore. You're not seeking revenge. You're not trying to make them regret what they did. You've simply outgrown the need for their involvement in your narrative. You're not just surviving, you're thriving in public silence. And that's what's eating them alive. Because now, your very existence is proof. Your life is the testimony. Your peace is the revenge that can't be refuted. How do you fight someone who refuses to fight? How do you hurt someone who's already turned their pain into power? You can't. They can't. You've become the living contradiction to their expectations. You should be bitter, but you're not. You should be broken, but you're whole. You should be haunted, but you're healed. You should be angry, but you're free. And there's nothing more terrifying than watching someone who was supposed to collapse and rise instead. Someone who should have been destroyed, smiling, calm, untouchable. Because now they finally see what you've known all along. Peace isn't the absence of pain. It's mastery over it. And you mastered it so completely that your silence became louder than their noise. Your stillness more powerful than their chaos. That's what real victory looks like. They're stuck in checkmate, frozen in a game they no longer understand, trapped in a loop of their own design. The most poetic part? They haven't even realized it yet. They still think they're playing. They still believe they have leverage. But every move they make now, every desperate attempt to reassert control, only exposes more of their insecurity, more of their desperation. If they talk about you, they reveal that you still live rent-free in their mind. If they ignore you, they expose how intimidated they are by the person you've become. If they reach out, they confess that they underestimated your worth. If they stay silent, They admit they know they've been replaced. Every path they take leads to the same conclusion. They lost the game and they can't find the rulebook anymore. There's no clever escape left, no manipulation to reset the balance. The irony is that you didn't even have to win in the traditional sense. You didn't outplay them, you simply stopped playing. You walked away from the board they built, the board where they made the rules, where they decided the stakes, where your pain was their entertainment. You flipped the whole paradigm by refusing to participate. You took your focus, your time, your energy, and built an entirely different game. One that doesn't revolve around them. One where they don't even exist. That's real victory. When you no longer need to defeat them because you've evolved beyond needing the fight at all. And here's the beautiful, brutally honest truth. None of this was about them. Not 1 ounce of it. You didn't rebuild yourself to prove a point. You didn't heal to make them jealous. You didn't find peace to make them watch. You did it because you finally understood that you were never meant to orbit someone else's chaos. You were meant to become your own center of gravity. Your healing isn't a weapon. Your peace isn't a performance. Your growth isn't a plot twist written to make them regret their choices. It's simply a byproduct of you finally choosing yourself. The reason it feels like revenge to them is because they've built their entire identity on being needed by you, on having emotional power over you. You were their mirror, their outlet, their fix. They fed off your reactions. They thrived on your pain because it made them feel significant. And now, for the first time, you're not feeding the system. You've cut the power supply. And what happens when something toxic loses its source of energy? It starves. That's what they're going through right now. Withdrawal. The kind that burns. They're feeling the cold void where your energy used to be. They're addicted to the chaos, to the push and pull, to the guarantee that they could poke you and get a reaction. Now they're met with silence, and silence is the one thing their ego can't process. It drives them mad because silence means they've lost relevance. Silence means you don't need to explain anymore. Silence means they don't exist in your narrative. Not as the villain, not as the hero, not even as a footnote. So let them scroll through your life from the sidelines. Let them replay every photo, every post, every win, trying to decode it for signs of weakness. They'll look for cracks to exploit, moments they can twist, emotions they can manipulate. But they won't find any. Not because you're flawless, but because you're fortified. You're not fragile anymore. You've become protected, not by walls, but by wisdom. You've learned boundaries, you've developed standards. You've built a version of yourself that no longer hands out access as charity. That old version of you, the one they could gaslight, guilt trip, and pull back into chaos, doesn't exist anymore. That person is gone, buried, mourned, replaced by someone sharper, someone steadier, someone who doesn't flinch when tested. What stands in that place now is something they unintentionally helped create, a version of you they awakened but can't control. You are the outcome of their own actions, the evolution they triggered but never anticipated. You are their consequence. You are the mirror that forces them to see themselves. You are the embodiment of every lesson they refused to learn. They thought they were writing your downfall, but instead, they authored your awakening. They thought they were ending your story, but all they did was help you begin a better one. And now they're left with nothing but reflection, because every time they see you, they see proof. Proof that their power was temporary. Proof that their control was an illusion. Proof that you didn't need them, they needed you. You were their source, their emotional anchor, their validation. And now, they're left with their own emptiness, staring into a void that once had your face in it. Meanwhile, you've become the walking example of what real transformation looks like. You are the story people whisper about when they talk about strength. You're the quiet revolution that shows everyone watching that it's possible. Possible to be shattered and still rebuild yourself into something stronger. Possible to be betrayed and still choose peace over vengeance. Possible to be hurt and still not become bitter. And that's what haunts them. The fact that your life now serves as living proof. You've become the case study in resilience they never wanted the world to see. Because you're not the warning anymore. You're the blueprint. You're not the tragedy. You're the testimony. You are the lesson that they accidentally taught. The evidence that healing is louder than any revenge, that peace is sharper than any weapon. You're what happens when destruction doesn't destroy, when someone decides that breaking isn't the end but the beginning of reconstruction. You didn't just survive, you transformed. You didn't just move on, you elevated. You didn't just grow, you outgrew. And now, whether they admit it or not, everyone sees it. Every person who doubted you sees it. Every person who helped hurt you feels it. And the people who silently rooted for your failure are watching you succeed without even trying to prove them wrong. That's checkmate. Not because you cornered them, but because you transcended the board. You didn't crush them. You made them irrelevant. You didn't destroy them. You dissolved their power. You didn't retaliate. You reinvented. And now they're stuck replaying a game that's already over, trapped in a loop of regret while you're out there building worlds they'll never touch. Because the moment you chose peace over participation, you didn't just win. You ended the war. Everyone who sees you thriving now really sees you, understands something that words alone can't capture. They see proof that survival isn't just instinct, it's a decision. Every single day you made that decision. You woke up, looked at the chaos left behind and said, "Not today." You refused to let what happened to you become what defines you. That's not chance, that's choice. That's discipline. That's strength in its purest form. Because let's be honest, survival isn't glamorous. It's not the soft glow people see now. It's the nights no one witnessed. It's the moments you sat in silence, battling thoughts that clawed at your sanity, forcing yourself to believe that this pain, somehow, someday, would mean something. It's the mornings you put on your best face while feeling like a ghost inside your own life. But even in those moments, especially in those moments, you chose to continue. You didn't have to. You could have given up, faded out, let them win. But you didn't. And that's what makes you different. That's what makes you powerful. Evolution, you learned, is not automatic. It's not something time gifts you just because you survived. It's deliberate. It's intentional. You chose to grow when bitterness would have been easier. You chose to forgive, not because they deserved it, but because you refused to carry them any longer. You chose peace, not because you didn't have the right to rage, but because you wanted freedom more than you wanted validation. You are living proof that you don't need your abusers to apologize. You don't need your betrayers to acknowledge what they did. You don't need the people who hurt you to evolve, to regret, or to understand. You don't even need them to see the light. You only needed one thing, to change your relationship with the pain. You had to stop running from it and start listening to it. Because pain, when you stop fighting it, becomes direction. It becomes clarity. It becomes rebirth. You decided your future mattered more than your past. You realized that staying bitter only kept you anchored to the version of you they destroyed. So you broke that chain. You stopped giving CPR to relationships that were meant to die. You stopped chasing closure from people who were incapable of honesty. You stopped explaining yourself to people who preferred distortion over truth. And in that stillness, in that quiet surrender, something incredible happened. You started to come back home to yourself. You chose yourself every single day. When your heart wanted revenge, you chose peace. When your pride wanted to prove a point, you chose purpose. When your exhaustion told you to quit, you chose endurance. When your mind replayed old wounds, you chose presence. These choices didn't make you weak. They made you unstoppable. Because consistency in healing is more powerful than any apology could ever be. And you've been consistent. Those daily, unseen, uncelebrated choices, they stacked, they compounded, they built momentum. Every moment you resisted becoming what hurt you, you rewrote your DNA. You reprogrammed your soul. You took the raw material of your pain and forged something unrecognizable from it. That's why you're not just moving forward, you're accelerating. You're no longer surviving out of instinct. You're thriving out of intention. And while they're stuck replaying the same stories, obsessed with the version of you that no longer exists, you're out here creating a life they can't even imagine. While they're dissecting your past, you're designing your future. While they're fixated on your old wounds, you're building new worlds. They keep trying to make sense of you through a lens of who you used to be, but you're light years ahead. That's the part they'll never grasp. Because they've never had to rebuild from the ground up. They've never had to walk through their own destruction and find purpose in the ashes. They've never had to stare at their reflection after betrayal and still find beauty in what was left. They've never had to forgive themselves for believing lies, for staying too long, for loving people who only knew how to harm. They broke others, but they've never been broken. They inflicted pain, but they've never had to heal. And that's why they can't understand your strength. They've never earned theirs. You faced the parts of yourself they would run from. You looked your trauma dead in the eye and said, "You don't own me anymore." You dissected every piece of yourself until you understood the blueprint of your soul. You took the fragments and rebuilt, stronger, sharper, more selective, more sovereign. And in doing so, you became something they'll never comprehend, whole. Now your silence cuts louder than your words ever could. Your calmness unsettles them because it's not passive. It's power. It's control. It's the kind of peace that can't be shaken because it's built on self-awareness, not illusion. You've stopped needing to be understood, and that's what drives them mad. You've stopped explaining, stopped reacting, stopped defending. You've mastered emotional detachment, and that mastery reads like danger to people who depend on chaos. Your happiness without them is their nightmare, because it tells the truth they've avoided their whole lives. They were never the source of your worth. They were the distraction from it. Your glow doesn't say, "Look what you did to me." It says, "Look what I did without you." And that truth is what devastates them, because for the first time they see what real power looks like. Not control, not manipulation, but independence, self-containment, peace. They can't mirror it because they've never faced their own reflection honestly. They can't replicate it because they've never done the work. And so they call your detachment cold. They call your boundaries selfish. They call your growth arrogance. But you know better. You know peace looks like apathy to people who depend on your chaos. And the truth is, they should be uncomfortable. Because your existence is their consequence. You're not their victim, you're their result. You're the evolution that rose from the destruction they caused. You're the lesson life sends when arrogance goes unchecked, when cruelty meets endurance. You're what happens when the person they tried to bury becomes the soil itself. You grew roots in the grave they dug for you. Now every time they see you, they see proof. Proof that their power was temporary. Proof that their narrative failed. Proof that you can be broken and still build, scarred and still shine, hurt and still holy. You're living evidence that peace is not the absence of pain, it's the mastery of it. And that's why your peace is their torment. Your silence is their mirror. Your joy is their exposure. Because every smile of yours says, you lost access to the best thing you ever had. And every step you take forward reminds them they'll never be part of your future. You've outgrown their dimension entirely. You've transcended the game. You no longer respond to the energy of those who live beneath your frequency. You're not angry, you're indifferent, you're not fighting, you're focused, you're not recovering, you're rebuilding. You're not trying to prove your worth, you're living it. And here's the truth no one tells you about healing. The moment you stop trying to be understood is the moment you become untouchable, because understanding requires proximity, and you've already moved too far. They can't reach you anymore. They can't read you anymore. They can't shake you anymore. You are the full circle moment they never expected. The proof that pain can turn into purpose. The evidence that closure is found within, not from others. The embodiment of what healing actually looks like. Not perfection, but peace. Not forgetting, but releasing. Not revenge, but rebirth. You are what happens when survival turns into sovereignty. When endurance turns into elegance. When forgiveness turns into freedom. And that's the ending they can't rewrite. The one where you walk away. Not broken. Not bitter. But beautifully beyond their reach. That's all for today. Dear Father, I pray for the growth of my faith. Help me trust you even when physical evidence is lacking. Let me believe in your perpetual presence, knowing you will never harm me. I understand that your thoughts for me are thoughts of prosperity and not harm to give me a good future. Thank you, gracious and eternal Father, for always listening to my voice. I offer up this prayer to you in the name of Jesus. Amen. Thank you, Jesus, for your love and provision. I am grateful for your presence in my life and the abundance you bring. If this video resonated with you, please like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with those who need to hear this message. Leave a comment below about your journey and how you are preparing for your own triumphant return. If you'd like to support our work, please consider contributing through Buy Me a Coffee. This helps us continually improve our content to offer you the best. The link to Buy Me a Coffee is in the description. No gift is too small. Whether it's a penny, a prayer, or a share, your generosity helps spread God's word and brings hope to others. Don't stop here. Watch our next video for powerful revelations about the signs that reveal you are the chosen one. We've enjoyed following this spiritual journey with you. Thank you for staying with us until the end. Keep shining brightly and embrace your destiny with courage. See you next time. Blessings to all the beautiful souls from the Enlighten wisdom.